Welcome back to HVAC Shop Talk. My name is Zack, and I'm filled with agitation because I'm sitting out here. I'm in my office build, which is about to take flight again here. You see there's just stud walls here behind me. What I did is I built a 10 by 14 office. I'm still working on it, obviously. Got a couple windows right behind the camera over there. Got a door off to this direction. Right now it's just a makeshift door with a little lock on it. But as of, I think, Thursday of this week, there's going to be 2 windows arriving, a door, a whole bunch of siding and trim and stuff like that for the outside so I can finally get moving again on this stuff because I've been kind of stagnant for a while. A couple months ago, we got into a situation where there's just a lot going on, so it was easy to kind of set it down. And like a lot of you know, when you set something down, it's kind of hard to pick it back up again. So I had a lot of trouble picking it back up again. I had to make a big order to Home Depot. I finally did it, and it should be here this week. And once I finally did it, it's like, all right, I'm ready to do this. And they're like, well, it's going to be a week away. I didn't want to pick up the stuff myself because with it being windows and doors, I didn't want to take a chance, especially the windows, of damaging it. I was going to build a little rack on the back of my truck so I could carry them in a way that wouldn't shatter the windows because you can't lay them down flat. I was going to build something where I could stand them up, but I said, instead of doing that, let me just pay these people their money and I have them bring out a whole bunch of stuff. So they're going to bring out a whole bunch of stuff, and hopefully I can finish the soffitting, the trim for the outside, the sheathing, siding for the outside, and everything short of painting the place. I hope I can get finished. I have a few extra things outside of 5/4 boards and some 2x8s that are treated. I can put a little deck on the front of it, so it should be really, really nice. Right now, it's kind of an echo chamber, and I'm more concerned about you hearing all the roosters crowing outside because there's multiple roosters that have been crowing for the last 20 minutes. I was worried about them being too loud. There's birds chirping. It's nice stuff. I'll be happy when it's a little bit quieter at recording time. And I'll get some R13 to put in these walls. Some R19 or R30 for the ceiling. I know ceilings are typically R30. In fact, I think the minimum standard in general, and you guys could correct me, is that you have in a 2x4 wall R13, or of course now you can do like foam insulation, but I'm not doing foam because it's too expensive. I'm just an ordinary man, people. I'm just an ordinary man. I can't go out, and people always asking me, why don't you get this, or this? I said, well, because I'm an ordinary person with ordinary amounts of money. I got 7 people living up there that I provide for the most part. There's no foam going in this building. There's nothing super fancy going in here. And that's one of the reasons I built it myself, because it's cheaper. And plus, I'm going to be honest with you, I love building stuff. I enjoy getting out here and putting my hands to work and using the knowledge that I've accrued over my lifetime, mainly from my father, because we did this whole venture back when I was 18 or 19. We actually built a little, I think it was 14 by 20 or 14 by 24 building. I used to live in it on my family's property. So we built the whole thing. The heating and cooling for that building, you would say, back then, you say, well, it could have been a mini split. There was mini splits back then, but it wasn't. It was a through-the-wall heat pump. So not exactly like a PTAC, but similar to a PTAC, except it didn't have... It was a heat pump, and it was made by Amana, of all people. And it just recently died after... Good grief. I see. If I was 18 and now I'm 42, that's 24 years that it would have been in service. I always sleep with a fan on, but in this case, I did not require a fan because that thing was like a train rolling through. It was loud. But for me, that was good. When I was sleeping during the day, not as good because you're trying to watch TV and stuff. I had little 2x4 stands with huge speakers. I bought like these PA speakers and hooked my television to them. It was the low rider out here. And I don't know if you guys can hear this stuff, but we got the roosters, and now someone's testing a rifle. That's just where I live, man. I wouldn't change it for anything, but it's just kind of funny. So, on the first order of business for today, I had written down here, I was going to write down some more stuff, but I kind of stopped in the middle here. But I already know what it is I was going to write down, luckily. But the first thing I wrote down is everyone has a better way, because I was on the internet, like people who are foolish would do, and that's where I live and work, unfortunately. I was on the internet, and I was putting up these short videos, and man, everybody has a better way than I do to do everything. I was so surprised to find out that I had the worst way of doing everything. That was really surprising to me. These guys were telling me that everything I thought was special was ordinary, and everything that I thought was ordinary was remedial. And it was just funny to be on answering the comments, because I answer some. A lot of times I'll joke around with them because I know that these people, they wouldn't act like that if they were in person here. It's just something about the internet that brings out the evil in every person. I don't know. We touched on this a little bit last time. I've touched on this in other podcasts, but it's just the sheer volume of this stuff is surprising. I will concede one thing. I probably am an idiot, so they probably do pick up on that fact. But there's a difference between picking up on the fact that I'm an idiot and acting on it. And the internet seems to bring out that part of you that acts on all these primeval, evil sort of tendencies. But, like I said, you listen to the folks, you kind of soak it in and see what they have to say. Sometimes it's good stuff. Sometimes it's just like, man, it's just picky stuff that they just want to, I don't know, you just want to prove that you're intelligent or something like that. I don't know. I know one thing that I'm going to say this very plainly, and let's just say it. I think people of our trade that are good, wholesome people, that are humble people, that just do their job and go about their business, need to be the predominant people of the trade. I don't know that they're not already, but at least they're not represented online. And when I watch stuff online, which there's a lot of folks watching like YouTube videos now, there's a lot of people watching Facebook clips, these shorts and stuff like I've been making, and they're getting a lot of information from those people. And I've always said that there's a lot of great information on there, but you got to know who to watch. You got to know who to watch, and you got to know kind of psychological tricks to understand when you think people's information is not the best. I'm going to do you a favor here. I'm going to tell you what I think are the best ones to watch, and you can kind of chime in the comments who you think is good to watch. But I know if I want to learn this HVAC trade and I want to do it in a way that is going to be a godly way, at least a positive way, I'm going to go to people like Brian Orr. I'm going to watch HVAC School and listen to that podcast. I'm going to go to people like Chuck Pierce, because I don't think there's a better person represented online than Chuck Pierce, in the form of humility, and a humility that kind of masks the intelligence that is at play, because Chuck is such a smart guy and such a good guy that you almost forget that he's just really, really good at the trade. You see him being so humble, and it's like, well, this is this country guy, he's so humble. But if you pay attention, he's good. He's good at a lot of stuff. And that's my favorite kind of person, the kind of one that you don't even notice how good they are until you kind of get into watching them, because they don't sit there and blabber all the time about how great they are and how much they know. There's nothing worse than how much somebody knows. And in that same vein, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys, I don't know a whole lot, just so I don't have to be one of those people. Just people you can listen to, that you could talk to, and you don't have to feel ashamed or self-conscious about talking to them about stuff, because they're going to tell you what they think the right way is, and they're not going to break you down for doing it. There's nothing that makes me sicker than seeing somebody get knocked down because they're asking a question, and even if it's a stupid question that every tradesman would have already known, I hate seeing people dive in because they're so insecure about themselves. They feel like they got to destroy every innocent entity that's asking a question. And you see it all the time. And I think it's insecurity from the people that are making these comments. I don't know what it is. There could be something. Maybe their mom and dad didn't hug them enough. Maybe their dog ran away. I don't know. But they need to get over it and join the rest of the trade that's just being nice. That's what I have to say there. People are like, who cares what you had to say? Man, that's a valid statement right there. That's a valid statement. All right, it's sponsor time now. The people who make this show possible. I'm going to run through this real quick, and this is the first time I'm going to do it like this. Usually I put like a thing up on the screen and play some music, but that's awful impersonal, and it seems like it's not very effective either. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you guys Refrigeration Technologies. This is Big Blue spray cleaner I have right here. It's Big Blue micro leak detector. A lot of you guys have used this before to find refrigeration leaks and maybe gas bubble leaks too. So, not the gas bubbles leak, it's actual gas that's leaking, but you understand what I'm trying to say here. It says designed by a service tech for a service tech, and that was John Pastorello designing that. It's a chemist/service tech. How cool is that? There's a lot of products these guys make, including the pan and drain treatment. They make their own coil gun, the Viper spray cleaner, aerosol, which I love for evaporators. That's probably my favorite. I know I like Big Blue, but the spray cleaner for evaporators is my favorite. I think you can actually use it on condensers too, but I just always used it for evaporators. So we have that. We also have, as a sponsor here for an interim period, we have White Rogers, the Allspark control from Emerson. Now, we look at that bad boy right there, and it has a few different features that other ignition modules of the past. This has Bluetooth. It has an app it will connect to help set it up. It is good for 24-volt intermittent pilot systems and for direct spark ignition systems. Has an LED display. They came out with a defrost board like a year or two ago. This is like the cousin to that. It looks like has that display and everything. Even goes a little bit farther because you can connect it with Bluetooth. The name of the application is the White Rogers Connect app. Download it in the iOS App Store and Google Play Store. Simple setup with full configuration text, faster installation time, product information, error code description, and troubleshooting tips. It's like an insane amount of controls that this will replace. And it has 500 plus intermittent pilot controls that it replaces and 150 direct spark ignition controls. So pretty cool stuff. This is the All Spark from White Rogers. Pretty cool. Longtime sponsor on the show here is Yellow Jacket, and this is their digital torque wrench. In this very room in which you see me sitting, I'll be installing a Cooper & Hunter mini split, 9,000 BTUs, and one of the things I'm going to use is a digital torque wrench to make sure I get the flares correctly torqued. I've already used this wrench whenever I was demonstrating how to properly torque a flare in a video a couple months ago, and it did a fabulous job. It really did great, and it was interesting to see how much torque was required versus how much torque I normally use, because I normally used way more than what was actually required, and I could have been splitting some flare nuts, or I did split flare nuts, is probably more apt to say, because it probably did happen, and I didn't have to. This is the Yellow Jacket torque wrench. The number on this wrench is 6648, meaning you never have to break a flare nut again unless the flare nut's faulty, if you use this sort of thing whenever you're doing your flaring for mini splits or any other flares that you might be doing. And now we have our good friends at Navac, who have been a long-time sponsor now, over a year. And this product, since we were talking about flares and torque wrenches, this product will go right along with your flares because you need to make them before you actually connect them and forget the nut or whatever. And this is the Navac NEF6LM. This tool makes your flare, and it makes it to a standard which is very difficult to reach when you make them by hand. Not impossible to reach. Of course, everybody can make a flare that's going to be pretty close to perfect, but this one routinely makes flares that are pretty close to perfect. I've tried it several times, and it hits the mark every time. And like I said, when I put the Cooper & Hunter mini split in this particular building, the flares will be made with this bad boy because it does a great job of making them. This is Navac's latest version. There's an older version that people liked as well, but they made some improvements. You see the size improvement, weight improvement. Try it out. And our other sponsor here is TruTech Tools, so I might as well say that you can save 8% off at TruTech Tools using our Shop Talk discount code, which makes buying stuff like the Navac flare and the refrigeration technology stuff all the more easier when you can save a good chunk of money. I should mention before we get into it on another subject here that Southwire reached out to me as well. And I just want to say that I'm a very lucky man that I've been in the position that people actually reach out and send tools to me to look at. I think it's pretty awesome. I know a lot of you guys would like to be in that same position, so I'm thankful for it. I just want you guys to know that. And the latest of this sort of series is Southwire asking if they could send out some stuff via Instagram. So I thought that was really cool. I said, sure, that's great. Again, they asked for an honest review, so I'll honestly review it. And I'm going to tell you what, I had some negative thoughts when it arrived, but we'll get into that in just a second. They did send out a new product, which is, it's a new product, which is the Southwire 250 lumen rechargeable LED headlamp. I'll be happy to try this sucker as I walk around at night working in the yard or exercising or whatever, or going into the crawl space, which was the case the other day, or a dark attic. I'll be happy to try this thing out. I do have a Hyper Tough one, which is the Walmart brand Hyper Tough, which is 500 lumens, which I've really liked. It's been really, really nice. So it'll be interesting to see if this thing will stack up against that. Who knows? But I'm going to tell you, I really like it. It's a big old mamma jamma, but I really like it. They also sent out this, which is the Southwire Auto Ranging Meter. Let me see if I can find the nomenclature. 141N Auto Ranging Meter, 600 AC DC volts, Category 3, non-contact voltage, and it says auto ranging as well, 5-year warranty, which is nice. Drop tested to 6 foot. And the first thing that I saw whenever I opened this mailer and pulled this out as, well, this ain't going to work. This ain't going to work. This ain't a clamp meter. If it's not a clamp meter, I don't want it. That's what I was thinking. And I got to have a clamp meter. I just got to have one because that's just the convenience of it. I've never used, like, I call these bench test meters, is what I've always called them. I've never used these bench test meters instead of a clamp meter because there's so many times which I want to clamp onto a wire and see how many amps it is. So I said, well, I'm just going to contact Southwire and tell them that, this is not the product for me. But then I said that line again to myself. This is not the product for me. So I said, well, let me look and see what it does. So going around the dial here, I have microamps. It's like, all right, well, not every meter has microamps, so that's a good thing. All right. It has milliamps. All right, well, that makes sense too, especially for people that work in other parts of the country. It has a 10 amp section just to measure 10 amps because it doesn't have an amp clamp, so it can't measure real high amperages. It has battery testing, which I don't know how often I'd be using that when you can just lick a battery. Right, guys? Non-contact voltage, AC and DC volts. It has, I believe, capacitance. It's hard to see because I'm 42, I guess. It does temperature and hertz. It does do capacitance. I'm just going to see what the maximum is. 100 microfarads is the maximum. So if you're testing like a start capacitor, you may not be able to test that, I guess. The resistance goes up to 40 mega ohms, which comes into play with some of the sensor testing. So the warranty is good. Some of the features are good. So I was thinking to myself, all right, well, maybe this thing will be good for guys who work on heating equipment. And here, I want you guys to tell me, the guys who work in other parts of the country on heating equipment, tell me if this would be a meter that you would actually use. Because I don't think personally that I would use it, just because the features that it kind of highlights are not ones that are front and center for me. I got to have the amp clamp, basically. Got to have the amp clamp. Need more amp clamp. So check it out. Let me know if you guys would use that, yes or no. You can do it in the live show comments, or you can do it in the comments below the video. Comments below the video are easier, because if I miss a part of the show because I have to go potty or one of my kids is screaming, then I can come back and see that later. It's hard to find the live comments. But I do want to thank Southwire for it, and we'll test it out and use it. And I found that don't prejudge. It doesn't have an amp clamp. Okay, whatever. It's fine. I'm not going to prejudge. I'm just going to use it and see how it works. So we'll go from there. Okay, so I wanted to get into some of the lessons I learned while I was scrapping material over the last few days, because I'm scrapping all this stuff that's been sitting in my yard for a long, long time. And going through this process, I have learned a lot, and I've learned a lot and reflected on what people could gain from being someone who scraps these materials. And at first glance, you're like, what are you going to possibly learn about, from scrapping? That's something that the people do. We don't even want to do that stuff. Sometimes people scrap their own stuff. A lot of times the single man companies do because it's extra money. That's why I'm doing it. I might buy tools with it. I just wonder what tools I'm going to buy. There's a sidebar while I think about tools for a while. Okay. Scrapping these units is a fantastic way to learn how they function. And of course, you don't see them in action, but one thing you do see is every part and how because you have to rip it apart. I mean, you're taking all this stuff apart, so you're going to understand how it's put together. I think that's an invaluable tool, because that can bridge or cause a bridge to form between what you've learned in a book or what someone has told you and reality. Because if someone says, yeah, we get refrigerant, comes out of the compressor, it comes out as a superheated gas, it goes into the reversing valve. In the case of a heat pump, it'll come out of that valve and cooling. It's going to go to the outdoor coil. It's going to circulate through that coil. It's going to cool down. It's going to become subcooled after it reaches a saturation temperature and drops below it. It's going to leave the condenser via the liquid line, go and hit a metering device before the indoor coil. It's going to cause it to expand. It's going to absorb the heat out of the air. I just put a really strong B on that. Absorb. It's going to absorb heat out of the air as it expands and turns to a gas. That gas is going to continue to warm up beyond its saturation point of becoming a gas, and it's going to become a superheated gas. That's where we get superheat from. The superheated gas is going to head back on the suction line. It's like going back from the store or something. We're going to head on back from the suction line, head on back to the unit, maybe go through an accumulator just to make sure there's no liquid, especially in the winter cycle for a heat pump. And it's going to go to the compressor. I said, okay, well, you just said a whole bunch of crap. And what does all that mean? But when you actually get into a unit and rip it apart, you can see all these pieces. You can see how the tubing's oriented. You can take a second and look at it and see how it works. And I always learned a lot from ripping this stuff apart. And I still learn a lot from just looking at what components are in the unit. And even if it only prompts a question, if you open up the service area of a unit, you see all the components, the electrical components right there. You see capacitors, you see contactors. Maybe there's one or two things you've never seen before, and that'll cause you to go, hey, what is this right here? What does it do? You know, I'm really strongly considering, for those of you who could hear the rooster in the background, just walking over there, shooting the rooster, tipping my hat to the person who lives there, and just walking back to my house without saying anything. That's really what I'm thinking about doing. I don't know if you guys can hear this stuff, but it's just the most annoying thing on God's green earth. All right. But let me get back here and maybe try to get my focus back onto this discussion. So you open up a cabinet, you might see something like a PTC, something really common in older units, used to start the unit or it helps in starting the unit. But you don't really see them much anymore, not in the unitary brands. Might be able to learn something. Might be able to learn something that's going to benefit you in service because you can learn what it actually does. A lot like it's starting components. Just like you would have a start capacitor and relay, it's like it's a less effective version of that because they don't allow for immediate restart because they get hot and they're not functional for a while, then they cool down. The idea is when the cycle comes around, you're able to start it up, it'll cool down and be able to start up the compressor again on the next cycle. You might see some controls you've never seen before. Some of the defrost boards out there look like they're from NASA. They have blinking lights. They have displays on them. It's very intimidating to open up and see one of them things, but then you can take it over to somebody and say, what is this right here? I mean, does this launch the space shuttle or something? Be like, no. It's just a defrost board, and someone's added some extra features onto it. Maybe it's a communicating system. It's a good way to learn things and gather experience without having to be in the moment where you might be under a lot of pressure to get something correct. So it's actually really, really nice. So if you have a chance to do that, maybe your company says, who wants to scrap stuff this weekend? We'll pay you something, whatever. Volunteer for it because I think it's a great idea. Some of the things that I learned while I was doing this process was the best way to empty oil out of the compressor because you got to empty the oil out for the scrapping people to even take it in. So you got to find a way to empty the oil out. You can see how much oil comes out of a compressor. If you do enough of the different things, you get a baseline for what should be expected. Say you dump out a compressor and they're 3-ton compressors and you get a certain amount of oil out, but all of a sudden you get to one and nothing comes out. Maybe you figure out why that one died, because when they have lack of oil, that's going to cause them to seize up and have issues. Sometimes you'll get a real good smell at some of the worst issues in the industry. And this is one of my favorites because you'll get to a unit and you'll cut it open, you'll be like, yow, the oil stinks on this unit. Well, my friend, you have stumbled upon the burnout situation for the compressor or an additive that someone has added. There's two distinct smells, I think, that go along with that. You can smell when a compressor has burned out and had issues. Usually that ends in the unit's death and replacement. So when you get it at the scrapyard, you open it up, it stinks. It stinks. And what I found is that leak stop smells a certain way too. And you can get used to these smells, so even when you put your hoses on gauges, that little psh that comes out, you'll be able to smell that stuff and get attuned to it. And you only do that through smelling it. I can't describe the stuff to you. I know when I smell it, I'm like, oh, that's what that is. But I can't describe it to you. Maybe someone in the comments can do that. I'm not sure, but I'm not good at that sort of thing. But it's a great way to get that knowledge because after 5, 10, 15 times of doing this, you'll have it embedded in your system. You'll be like, okay, I smell that thing. This thing's got trouble. One thing that I thought was really interesting is that I cut open an old dehumidifier where the compressor had issues and locked up. This is several years ago. This stuff's been sitting out here for a while, guys. And to be honest with you, it looked very redneck at my house in the back for quite a while now. There's been many complaints. My wife would hum the Sanford & Son jingle whenever I walked into a room, so you get an idea what's going on here. So I cut open this dehumidifier, and what do I see coming out of the tubes but green slime? Now, I've heard a lot of people talk for a lot of years about the green slime in the HVAC industry, but I have yet to ever see anything like that. So to see that for the first time, and I put it up on TikTok here this morning, but I'll put it up a little bit later as well on different like Instagram and stuff like that, maybe a YouTube story or whatever. You guys can look at that and tell me. I'll put it up on the screen here if I still have the video. I've never seen this stuff before, and I would have never seen it, likely, if I hadn't been doing the scrapping stuff. You wouldn't get the smell test. You wouldn't get the green slime. You wouldn't get that exposure to components and the different components from unit to unit. Like for a carrier unit, you might see that it has king valves, and other systems have regular service valves. So you say, well, what's the deal with this? And then they explain why there's no Schrader core in this particular opening. And then you get an idea and a little crash course right there about different units. You get to see that some units have ball valves and some units don't for their service valves. Like Trane has a ball valve. I like that ball valve. It's really, really nice. You can see the dryer locations. You can see the size dryers. You get to see the compressors. When you're dumping out the oil, you get to see the specs on the compressor very well for the first time maybe, because when you're looking at a compressor from outside the unit, it's hard to see that stuff. You can't always see what it says the microfarad rating should be for the run cap. You can't see how much oil's in there, what kind of oil's in there. You can learn about different types of oils and just do it hands-on. That's been the way I've always been, guys, kind of mix it up and then learn that way. For me, that's been easier than book learning. I get fired up and read books every now and then, but the only book I really read with any consistency is the Holy Bible. And for me, that just goes back to Ecclesiastes again. So there's nothing, worth working for if you're missing that, is what I say. Hey, look, there's the Bible right here. RTFM, guys, read the flipping manual. Read the manual. Maybe at the last part of the day here, I can just flip into a random location. We can learn a little bit something about HVAC. Let's see what happens. This is truly random. I want to make sure I'm in the New Testament, though. Revelation. I don't know about that. Revelation might be too much. Let's see Jude here. Jude, verse 14. It was also about these that Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment on all and to convict all of the ungodly of their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him. These are grumblers, malcontents, following their own sinful desires. They are loudmouth boasters, showing favoritism to gain advantage. Wait a second. These are grumblers, malcontents, following their own sinful desires. They are loudmouth boasters, showing favoritism to gain advantage. I believe I've met my YouTube commenters and TikTok people on here. I believe we found them. It's a joke, but there's some truth in every joke. Here's the final part. I have it highlighted, so let's see what it says. I'm going to go ahead and round this out because I have this section highlighted here from verse 17 to 23. But you must remember, beloved, the predictions of the apostles of our Lord Jesus Christ. They said to you, in the last time there will be scoffers following their own ungodly passions. It is these who cause divisions, worldly people devoid of the Spirit. But you, beloved, building yourselves up in your most holy faith and praying in the Holy Spirit, keep yourselves in the love of God, waiting for the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ that leads to eternal life. And have mercy on those who doubt. Save others by snatching them out of the fire. To others show mercy with fear, hating even the garment stained by the flesh. Right there is a pretty important line, I think. Keep yourselves in the love of God, waiting for the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ, and have mercy on those who doubt. Guys, let's not divide people. Let's not bring people down. Let's build them up. Let's tell them if they are doing something wrong and you see it, myself included, let's tell them in a way that's kind and merciful, that we can spare hurting them in order to actually lift them up. And of course, let's lift them up in the knowledge of Jesus Christ is the one who saves and preserves eternal life, and that this world is fleeting. So no matter what you're commenting on or thinking about as far as worldly things, those things are going away. They won't be here forever. Your spirit and your spirituality is going to be here forever, hopefully. Follow Jesus, my friends. He'll show you the way. That was the book of Jude, one book before Revelation, which is the final book of the Bible. I hope you guys got something out of the show tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune in next week. We'll have yet another wonderful show. And remember, I'm trying to put my tool shows, which are on the Zack's Tool Shop channel, directly after these shows. So if you want to watch those, you can just keep watching. Just flip the channel. And what I'll do is I'll put a little box at the end of the show here on the screen that shows you a link to that. YouTube calls them end screens. It has like subscribe and then a video right there. I'll try to put that video on there. Hopefully you see it. If you don't, I'll put a link in the description down there. Hope to see you over there. Work safe, guys. And I'll see you on the next one.